This video presentation is about the paper Two Cases for Traces, a theoretical framing of mediated joint activity. My name is Ida Larsen-Ledet, and I co-authored the paper with Mirzel Avdic and Susanne. Our paper makes three main contributions. We propose traces as a useful notion when designing for technology-mediated activity, in particular joint interaction such as collaboration or sharing over time. We also present a set of reflexive questions to help researchers and designers approach technology with an eye to traces. Finally, we share our reflections on how empirical work served to inform and add nuance to the theoretical principles we applied in our analysis. In our paper, we analyze and compare two case studies. One case study addressed smart speakers in the home and how people understand the role of smart speakers in smart home setups over time or when sharing a space with other people. The other case study addressed collaborative writing and how people maintain an overview over shared work and make sense of changes over time. But what do smart speakers and collaborative writing have in common? To take an example, with smart speakers, the setup often involves not only the speaker itself, but also a companion app and several smart home technologies that a person may control using the speaker, such as smart lights or curtains. This can make it challenging to maintain an overview over how various devices and objects are interconnected. This in turn can make it difficult to debug the setup and find the cause of breakdowns, or to know who is able to control which devices and objects and in which configurations. Similarly, when people work on documents together, they often use multiple applications and devices. For example, a document might undergo multiple stages from drafting to proofreading to formatting, often using different pieces of software. With multiple collaborators, it's not always easy to know which file contains the most recent version or whether it's ready for the next iteration of work. And people often resort to manual solutions such as naming conventions to keep track of documents, either formalized or more ad hoc. Like with smart speakers, tracing changes across these multiple artifacts can be a complicated process. These examples reveal shared challenges between the two cases. In both cases, it's hard to know what has happened, which artifacts are associated with each other, and who is in control or whose turn it is to do something. And this is just to name a few of the challenges. But how can traces help? Or more accurately, how can thinking in terms of traces be useful when we try to understand or design for scenarios like these? Before I get into a general understanding of traces, I'll provide some examples of opportunities that are shared across the two cases. People collaborating on a document often leave messages or signals for themselves and others. For example, people writing a document together might leave notes about their motivations for particular revisions, or change the font color, or mark up the text in other ways, such as coloring text red to indicate that it needs fact-checking. Authors might also rely on less deliberate signals, such as by checking when a document was last opened to get a sense of how much progress has been made. These different traces of activity communicate something with varying degrees of intent, and they manifest with different kinds of materiality. Font highlights and notes are both deliberate signals, while timestamps and files are most often incidental side effects of activity. Highlights are material, while timestamps are verbal, and leaving notes relies on verbal information that may be combined with material indicators, such as their placement in the document. These nuances are also relevant when it comes to smart speakers. Although interactions with smart speakers are mostly verbal, their effects are often material or physical, such as a change in temperature or lighting. With configurations that span multiple physical objects, a smart speaker setup provides opportunities for embedding information materially in the surrounding space. The speaker could, for example, provide an overview of which light bulbs it controls by momentarily flickering all the light bulbs that are part of the configuration. These comparative examples have shown us both several kinds of information people need and rely on, and how it might manifest itself in the two settings. Speaking more generally, we understand traces to be connections. These connections may, for example, span across time, location, people, and devices. They reflect things like change in development, physical movement, interactions, activities, and connectivity. We understand these traces both as something inherently available in and left behind by technology use, and as an interaction mechanism to be designed and implemented. In order to understand both how to leverage existing traces and how to design new interactions with them, we applied two lenses to our case studies, an analytical lens and a constructive lens. We applied these two lenses across 4 principles from activity theory, a psychological theory that describes how artifacts mediate human activity and collaboration. We developed a set of questions under each principle that may help us and others analyze and design for collaborative situations. One of these principles is multiplicity and artifact ecologies, and it captures some of the challenges I outlined in the first example. And one of the analytical questions we might ask of this principle is: what helps or hinders users in tracing connections between devices or other objects? Another principle regards material and communicative mediation. Constructive questions for this include: how could traces be presented materially? And how would different representations emphasize and filter information? The two other principles and the rest of the questions we developed are presented in the paper along with concrete examples of current and potential scenarios. We hope you've been inspired to think more about traces, and that you want to read our paper to learn more about how we carried out our analysis and what we learned about ways that empirical work can inform and add nuances to theory, or to see additional reflexive questions and read more about the empirical examples that inspired them. Thank you for listening.